Hello, it's Mr. Middle here again. Today we're going to have a look at the causes, the events and the consequences of the Hungarian uprising in 1956. So this guy here, we've had a look at. He's called Mátyás Rákosi. He was sort of the hatchet man of the Hungarian Communist Party, who were relatively unpopular in Hungary after the end of the Second World War. By 1947, Rákosi had got rid of, he'd salami sliced, in his own words, all of his opposition. So, like lots of the other communist parties, he'd got rid of any opposition and they'd forced all the other parties to leave power. So, Hungarians clearly unhappy about this, and there's lots and lots of reasons why they were disappointed and frustrated with Rákosi. So lots of Hungarians were religious. They believed in the Catholic Church, and they were very unhappy when the head of the Catholic Church in Hungary, Cardinal Mindszenty, was imprisoned, and he was told he was never going to leave prison because he was an opponent of the Communist Party. You weren't allowed to any sort of religious education, and also the secret police would check up on people who perhaps were religious or criticised the Communist Party or even criticised Rákosi. And also, Hungary wasn't allowed to take any martial aid. Stalin refused to let any of the satellite states take that martial aid. After 1953, when Stalin dies, Khrushchev, this man here, comes into power. He starts to talk about something called de-Stalinization, basically getting rid of all these sort of dodgy things that Stalin had done, basically trying to improve communism, make it more attractive, so that other countries would want to adopt the communist system rather than the capitalist system. So, this is bad news for Rákosi, who is fired. Rákosi obviously is a Stalinist type leader, and that isn't really going to work under this new Khrushchev-style leadership. So we get a new guy in. He's still a communist, but he's called Imre Nagy, and this is quite popular with the Hungarians because they hope that this guy is going to make some changes for the better. So Nagy talks about a new course, like a new direction, something that's going to be better for Hungary. So these are all the sorts of things that the Hungarians were after. So they wanted to have a bit more of a choice on who was in charge, perhaps to have a little bit more communication with the West, the other side of the Iron Curtain. They want to get rid of the secret police. They want to have a bit more sort of say and be able to say what they'd like in Hungary. Clearly there's some problems there, and quite quickly Nagy gets himself into some trouble with Khrushchev. So Nagy gets fired 2 years later, and Rákosi, the Stalinist-style leader who's very unpopular with Hungarians, he gets rehired. So we've got Rákosi back in power in 1955. This is quite a famous cartoon. It's by a British artist. You can probably see here, this is Khrushchev. He's got his whip here to signify that he's in charge, he's got power, and he's trying to tame all these different bears here who he wants to keep on the little plinth here. This represents obviously the Iron Curtain, or possibly a cage. This idea that they're stuck behind the cage, they're not allowed to be free. And we can notice that Yugoslavia under Tito, he's gone a bit on his own there, he's not interested. Poland aren't very happy with Khrushchev. And Hungary, if you look at it, the expression's very angry there in 1956. The other countries seem fairly obedient. So de-Stalinization is causing Khrushchev some problems because these other countries think that it means more freedom rather than just his own style of leadership. So this inevitably leads to protests. The Hungarians are poor, they don't have the religion that they want, they've got an unpopular leader, they feel like they're being controlled by the Soviet Union. So there's huge protests in Budapest, which is the capital of Hungary, and you can see here, this guy here is a member of the AVH, the secret police, and they've strung him up, they've burned him, they've killed him. So quite gruesome really. These guys very happy that they've killed one of these secret policemen. They've also pulled in statues here. This is Stalin's statue. They've chopped the head off, and then they start to bash it with a traffic sign here as well, to show how much they hate communism, and especially the Stalinist type leadership, which Rakoshi's got a similar style. So, Khrushchev is obviously concerned, so he gets rid of Rakosi for the second time. So he's fired, he's gone. And Naj, who was quite popular, is returned to power. Just remember, obviously, that he's still a communist, but he just wants to have a little bit more reform, a little bit friendlier towards the Hungarians' wishes. One of the first things that Naj does is he asks Khrushchev to remove all the tanks from Budapest. So they've all got to leave, and they're all going to go back to the Soviet Union. So it's this idea that they're not sort of controlling them by force. So Khrushchev agrees to that. And again, these aims start to come out. So these are all the things that they want. They want free elections, they want to have a proper vote with more than one party to vote for, freedom for the press, freedom to say what they want, to worship God if they wish, and also they don't want to be part of the Warsaw Pact. This is going to be very important because obviously this is a massive change. If one country leaves the Warsaw Pact, all the other ones will follow. So this is a big challenge for Khrushchev. Does he let Hungary become a neutral state, so not part of the Warsaw Pact? All the other satellite states, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Romania, they all tell Khrushchev that he's got to send these tanks back in, because if he doesn't send them to Hungary, all of their people will ask for the same thing, and all the satellite states will fall and they'll become either neutral or they'll become capitalist. So all these tanks return back to Hungary. 1,000 tanks roll into the capital, Budapest, to put down these attempts at reform. Lots of ordinary people, women here, you've got young men, more women with rifles. They're very determined to try and get rid of all these tanks and get rid of communism. You can see lots of these tanks here have been damaged and destroyed by homemade weapons. So there's fierce fighting, especially in Budapest, the capital, and they kill quite a number of Warsaw Pact soldiers in the fighting. But they've got rifles, the Warsaw Pact countries have got tanks, so it's really a matter of time before Hungary is forced to accept the inevitable. So a week of fighting, 7 days of fighting there, but by November 1956 they're forced to surrender. So all these Hungarians here are forced to surrender and give up, and their uprising is crushed. They're going to be forced to do what Khrushchev tells them. So, hard to estimate, but there's been estimated about 20,000 Hungarians killed and thousands more afterwards put in jail by the secret police. Okay, because people had fought, lots of them fled the country in fear of being arrested by the secret police. Lots of them fled to Austria. It's a sort of a grisly end for Imre Nagy, the reformer. He's executed very soon afterwards. And they don't bring Rakosi back because obviously he's very unpopular. So Khrushchev hires a new guy, this guy called Janos Kadar. And he's loyal to Khrushchev, and he's killed Nagy as sort of a lesson to all of the leaders not to try the same thing. So don't do what Hungary did, or you're going to meet this grisly end where we're going to tie you up with barbed wire, chuck you in a grave, and leave you to rot. And finally, Khrushchev has sent this message out that you should not challenge the control of the Soviet Union. So it's another 12 years, not until 1968, that any of the satellite states attempt to challenge the way that the system is run again. This makes, obviously, communism look very bad abroad. Other countries are put off becoming communist. But equally, America doesn't look great because the Americans don't actually go and help. So they've not followed the Truman Doctrine like they said they would originally. So it's the first time that the Americans don't follow the Truman Doctrine. They're too concerned that it's going to lead to a nuclear war. The arms race is heating up, and they're concerned it's going to end up in nuclear conflict if they had given the rebels any help in Hungary. Okay, so that's all you need to know about the Hungarian Revolution of 1956. So you've got the causes, why it happened, the main events, and you've also got the consequences. So have a little look through again if you're unsure, but all these things hopefully should help you write a good answer on the Hungarian Revolution. Okay, we'll speak to you again soon.